Hi, welcome to a Brite online presentation in our educational series. Today we'll be covering a topic that I get approached with very often, and that is, why is it taking IT so long to find what I'm looking for? Sure, it takes time to investigate and find items based on a request, but what is really so complex about it in our digital world with instant recall search websites? Why is it so complex in an organization? So here we'll be talking about some reasons which make this a complex task. Firstly, the definition of evidence discovery in this context is any evidence for a subject or request which is asked to be produced. This can be electronic data or other items, such as hard copy information or even physical items which are the results of searches done. So why evidence discovery and not eDiscovery, as many people in the know talk about? Well, firstly, to make it easy for everyone to understand, I get asked what eDiscovery is very often. But as well, electronic discovery only covers the electronic version of information which is being searched and discovered. However, we enter the same process in any situation where we would like to find something, evidence for a reason. We make a request to the holders of the items we need. They do the investigation based on the criteria we've given them, and they, hopefully, return the items we're asking for. In the context of this discussion here, we will stick with digital information. And what you see now is a basic timeline of information created in an organization. We have data created before today, which is the known legacy data. For those of us with retention periods, this brings the legacy data to a finite point back in history, beyond which the information should be deleted. Should is the operative word here. Past this point, we have data which may not be directly known, but should be considered when thinking about our investigations. This information can exist on backup tapes or even as hard copy documentation, or items archived away. We also have items which would be created into the future. We need to ask ourselves, does this information also relate to our request? So the use case here, to show some aspects of the complexity in this particular example, we will talk about a legal matter which originates in the USA. The requester for this matter is asking for information over a specific time frame. More specifically, the request is for information which is owned by a person, a custodian of the information, if you will. Up to this point, it's quite straightforward on what the ask is. However, the first level of complexity comes in when we consult HR about this person. When was he/she employed? Over what time period was the employment? What locations were worked from? And finally, if or when they had left the organization. When we take this information into account, we see that there are multiple locations we need to consult to gain access to the information. This means getting the geeks involved, right? Most times, IT don't even know the information from HR. And as you can see, this would have been a nightmare task for them. But let's be positive right now and stay on best practice. So we send the employment statuses to IT and ask that they confirm that if the employee's data is in fact there. The geeks come back and tell us that the data for the person in question does actually exist in each of the locations for the time period specified. As we can see, what started out to be a simple query has now greatly increased in complexity. Can you imagine if we now add multiple people to the same search? Respect to the geeks who have dealt with this over years. In these matters, tracking and tracing which information is located where for each of these people becomes extremely difficult and often ends up having errors and omissions because of this difficulty. And I wish this was the end. But unfortunately, that's not the entire pain. Add to this the fact that when transferring data between restricted countries globally, we need to think about cross-border approvals and local laws. We need to ask ourselves, is this data allowed to leave? Who's asking for it, and for what reasons? Now, our IT departments are normally caught in the middle of it, having to please and explain why the data is needed and get approval for the move. Often having to run their own investigations as to who could possibly sign off on this move. All that to get information about 2 people. And very often these legal matters involve tens to hundreds of people. And this is where we at Brite have the answer. eDCaseMAN helps in simplifying this nightmare. Firstly, our ability to provide standardized request pages to all who are requesting for evidence in a template-based form. So dependent on what kind of case we are looking at requesting, we can have specific forms set out to those matters. Secondly, we can connect directly to organizations' HR systems and other areas which contain historical information about the employees. This can then be used to further investigate and scope the search. We then attach this information directly to the matter in the system and hold it centrally. Thirdly, we send this information to the appropriate nerds in the relative locations and allow them to update the system centrally with what they have found. Fourthly, when we see the information is crossing between restricted borders, we inform the relative people who are able to directly take action, see the reasons for the move, and give their approval decisions. And finally, for the approved items, IT is able to defensively deliver them. The whole process from request through investigation and until delivery of the evidence is captured centrally in eDCaseMAN, and the full process, actions list, and chain of custody can be recalled at any time through PDF reports by authorized personnel, of course. Brite, bringing real-time innovation to enterprise once again.